I spent $200,000. Kenny, who didn't even come to my mom's funeral, had suddenly flown overseas. $200,000. What did you do with all that money? Remember our nice piano at home? I sold it, dude. Being from a rich family has its perks. It was a good piano. I never thought it would sell for $200,000. Kenny thought the piano at home was his, but he was wrong. My condolences. I get all the inheritance from the family estate. But that piano was actually bought by our grandpa for my brother, so it's still his. My brother loves that piano and teaches piano now. He left it at our house because it's too big for his place. If my brother finds out we sold it without asking him, he'll be really mad. Just giving him money won't fix it. When I told Kenny this, he hung up right away. Hi, I'm Rachel Schneider, a 45-year-old office worker. My family has a long history tracing back to colonial times and is quite prominent in our community. Thanks to my late father's successful business, we now possess assets worth $9 million. Originally, my older brother was set to inherit the family estate, but he chose love over inheritance, opting to forego his rights to marry his girlfriend, who needed an heir for her family's wealth. This decision left me with the task of finding a spouse to carry on our family name. Despite my desire for independence and reluctance to rely on family wealth, I focused solely on my career, and before I knew it, I was in my mid-40s and still single. Realizing the urgency of continuing our family line, I decided to take action and attended a singles mixer. It was there that I met Kenny, my current husband. Surprisingly, he's 10 years younger than me, but at the event, he showed no interest in the younger women and approached me directly. I'm not sure if you're okay with someone my age, I asked him multiple times. But Kenny gazed into my eyes and replied, I'm a bit shy and not very assertive. I've always been attracted to older, more grounded women. Kenny's demeanor matched his words, gentle and reserved. I sensed he could bring a sense of calm to my family, which tends to be assertive. As our relationship blossomed, there was something important I needed to share with him. My mother had been ill and bedridden for the past year, and my sister-in-law, Catherine, and I were taking turns caring for her. Considering our age and the prospect of marriage, I struggled with how to reveal this to Kenny. Eventually, on our third date, I mustered the courage to tell him. To my relief, he not only accepted but also proposed, expressing his willingness to assist with caregiving. His kindness deeply moved me. At least, that's how I initially felt. Kenny works as a daycare teacher, but just 4 months into our marriage, he expressed a sudden desire to quit his job. When I inquired about the reason, he wore a remorseful expression and said, "Sorry, Rachel. The parents at the daycare are too demanding and complain a lot. I can't handle it anymore." It was evident that Kenny was struggling, appearing so timid. Normally, I would have encouraged him to persevere, but with him assisting in my mother's care and my pregnancy progressing, I remained silent. However, I soon began to regret my leniency. One day, as I exited the shower and approached the bedroom, I overheard Kenny whispering on the phone. What I heard left me shocked and unsettled. I managed to tie the knot without her suspecting a thing. I'm jobless. She bought my story about quitting work hook, line, and sinker. Little does she know, I ditched that job 2 years back. His conversation seemed directed at a friend on the other end of the line. A faint male voice responded, "You're quite the operator. Rachel's family is loaded, so I thought I hit the jackpot when I met her at that singles event. But let's face it, given her age, I was probably her only option. I felt duped. Was the sweet Kenny I fell for all an act? I wanted to confront him right then and there, but the thought of the baby stopped me cold. With Kenny's true colors revealed, I began to doubt our future. Today, Catherine will be looking after my mom until 5:00 p.m. Then it's my turn. I debated whether to confide in someone about Kenny. That's when my brother's wife, Catherine, approached me. "Rachel, you seem troubled. If there's anything on your mind, feel free to share," Catherine said, her kindness evident, having cared for her own mother for years and now mine. "She's really good with Mom too. So I confided in her about Kenny, and she listened attentively. It's good you opened up. Keeping it to yourself could harm your unborn child, she reassured me. Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Talking won't solve everything, but it does lighten the load. Still, this situation is quite something. Catherine looked genuinely concerned, almost as if it were her own problem. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Kenny walked in without waiting for an answer. Both of us were surprised, but Kenny acted as if nothing was wrong and smiled. Rachel, I'll be helping with your mom's care from now on. You're not in the safe period yet, so I don't want you to strain yourself, Kenny said, playing the gentleman in front of me. Really? Okay, let me show you how to care for her. No, I'll learn from Catherine. You just rest at home. Well, my brother's coming home early today, so we won't need her help. Upon hearing that, Catherine looked at me, shaking her head, as if to say, it's okay. She might confront Kenny and get the full story once I'm gone. With that in mind, I decided to leave it to her and head home. But I couldn't shake my worry, so I pretended to leave but hid nearby. Catherine tried to start a conversation with Kenny, but he beat her to it. I've been meaning to ask, why are you taking care of your mother-in-law in this house? He asked, using the same tone as on the phone. Well, my husband's busy, and Rachel has her job. But more importantly, why you ask? Then Kenny interrupted. What? And began hurling insults at Catherine. You live in such a wealthy home. You'd have enough money to put your mother-in-law in a care facility, wouldn't you? Or is it something else? Did your husband give up his claim to this family's wealth? So you're trying to curry favor by taking care of her? That must be it. You'd be pretty upset if you married into money and didn't get a piece of the inheritance, wouldn't you? It was cruel. I was furious too, ready to leave the room. But just as I was about to, Catherine, noticing me, signaled with her eyes to stay put. Reluctantly, I remained silent and watched the scene unfold. You've hit a nerve, haven't you? If that's the case, leave right now. This family's wealth belongs to my wife and me, so I'll handle my mother-in-law's care alone from now on. With Kenny's stern declaration, Catherine felt it was pointless to argue further and left the scene. Sensing the tension, I discreetly stepped outside, concerned about Catherine's feelings and wondering how to apologize to her. Kenny took over Mom's care entirely, refusing any assistance from me. He only provided basic instructions on caregiving. But his neglectful approach led to tragic consequences, and our mother passed away. The funeral took place at the church where generations of our family had been laid to rest. However, Kenny was nowhere to be found from the moment Mom passed away. Despite my attempts to locate him, I was too overwhelmed with funeral arrangements to pursue the matter. Relatives and neighbors were puzzled by his absence. Catherine, grief-stricken at the altar, apologized for trusting Kenny with Mom's care. Approaching her, I tried to offer some comfort. Catherine, please don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. Rachel, it's not your fault either. But where is that man? I wanted to confront him today, and he disappears just as Mom passes away. Exactly. And didn't Kenny often leave the house while he was supposed to be caring for Mom? Where was he going? Yes, neighbors mentioned he was frequently out, almost as if he wasn't caregiving at all, just loafing around. They also mentioned a big truck that came by once. What was that about? I wanted to ask, but with the funeral, I didn't bring it up. Days passed, and Kenny still hadn't returned. Then, I received a call from him. Hey Rachel, I'm in a fancy hotel in Europe, like the ones you see on TV travel shows, Kenny said nonchalantly. Kenny, you missed Mom's funeral, and now this. I spent $200,000. $200,000? Where did you get that kind of money? Remember the grand piano at our family home? I sold it. Who knew it was worth $200,000? Kenny confessed to selling the family's cherished grand piano and squandering the money on luxury travel in Europe. I never imagined Kenny would pull something like this while supposed to be caring for Mom. Our family home had tight security, but with family, it's different. That truck must have been there to move the piano. Why would you do something so selfish? The whole family was worried about you missing the funeral. Well, once you have a kid, you won't have much free time. Since you have a job, I guess I'll have to be the stay-at-home dad. Kenny's words left me stunned. Despite my anger, his willingness to take on childcare was a silver lining. But it seemed he was aiming to live off me. Additionally, Kenny seemed to think the piano belonged to me. Confronting Kenny, who had unknowingly sold a piano and spent the money, I started with my condolences. Huh? What do you mean? Kenny seemed bewildered, so I explained about the piano. That piano belonged to my grandfather, bought for my brother, so it still belongs to him. Oh, really? I'll just apologize to your brother then, Kenny replied, lacking any remorse for selling someone else's property. Kenny only met my brother at our wedding, so it's understandable he didn't know. My brother is a piano teacher and has loved the piano since childhood. He begged our grandfather for that specific piano. Although there's no room for it in his house now, it's still his. He even dreams of starting his own school with it. The piano means everything to him. I can only imagine what punishment he'll have for you when he hears it was sold without permission. By the way, my brother despises dishonesty. As I explained, Kenny remained silent. Understand? Mere compensation won't suffice when he finds out you sold his beloved piano. He's not one to compromise. I wonder what punishment awaits you. With that warning, the call abruptly ended. He's probably regretting it now. I called my brother and told him everything. Needless to say, he was furious. The next day, Kenny rushed home, finding everyone gathered in the living room. What's going on? Why is everyone here? Kenny asked nervously. I heard everything from Rachel, my brother said sternly. What possessed you to sell someone else's property, especially something so valuable, without consulting the family? Kenny tried to justify himself, visibly shaken. I was just trying to pitch in with the household chores out of boredom. When I saw the old, large grand piano, I figured no one was using it anymore. So you decided to sell it. Yeah, it seemed like a waste to just leave it there. My brother, wearing a stern expression, pressed further. Really? That piano was special, imported by our grandfather from a top European manufacturer. Where's the money from the sale? As anticipated, my brother was playing his part well. Everyone probably knew Kenny had spent all the money on an overseas trip, but my brother was aiming for a confession in front of everyone. Kenny seemed lost in thought, struggling to come up with an excuse. The sales money. Yeah, it hasn't come in yet. Kenny stammered, clearly flustered, but my brother wasn't buying it. You're lying? How deceitful can you get? And what about those souvenirs from Europe in that huge suitcase? Kenny recoiled as if struck by lightning, closing his eyes in shame. I'm sorry, I spent all the money. Kenny's admission left the relatives murmuring in shock. Everyone knew the value of that grand piano. They couldn't fathom how Kenny could blow $200,000 on just one trip overseas. My brother, looking down at Kenny, lifted his chin with his hand, locking eyes with him as he said, as Rachel probably told you, that piano was mine. Now that it's gone, you'll repay every penny. If you can't, I'll sue you for theft. Are we clear? My brother's intensity was palpable, almost resembling a mob boss. While this would typically be a family matter, my brother was likely using intimidation tactics, knowing Kenny was clueless about the law. Predictably, Kenny lost his voice and began sweating profusely. Then, with a terrified glance at me, he pleaded, Rachel, please help me. His voice was desperate, but I had no intention of intervening. This mess was entirely of his own making. When I rejected his plea, Kenny resorted to a ludicrous argument, saying, Don't be so cold. I looked after your mom while you were pregnant. I saw the trip as a reward for myself after caregiving. Let's just say we both agreed to sell the piano this way. Since we're siblings, it can't be considered theft, right? I was so dumbfounded that my mouth hung open, unable to form a response. It was Catherine who stepped in to defend me. That's enough. Didn't you tell Rachel not to assist with caregiving? You even accused me of being after the inheritance and tried to push me away. Kenny, did you say such awful things to my wife too? Yes, I didn't want to worry you, so I kept quiet. But this man must have been scheming to sell the piano without letting Rachel and me near the family home. Catherine's words resonated with me, remembering how Kenny prevented me from getting close to the family home when he said he'd handle our parents alone. I reached the same conclusion. My brother's anger flared up once more. Listen closely. My wife cared for Mom because she wanted her to stay out of the facility. She agreed out of kindness, not for money. First, apologize to my wife right now. With my brother grabbing Kenny by the collar, tears welled up in Kenny's eyes as he knelt before Catherine. I'm so sorry, Catherine. Kenny's apology for his disrespectful behavior towards Catherine didn't soften the cold gazes of the relatives. Then, one of them shouted at Kenny, "You need to repay the money from the piano sale promptly. We can't tolerate a criminal in the Schneider family. It'll stain our name." Misinterpreting the situation once more, Kenny made another peculiar remark. Exactly. We can't have a criminal in the family, right, bro? So let's keep calm. We'll work together as a couple to repay the debt gradually. Even my uncle was left speechless by Kenny's illogical response. Feeling that further discussion would be futile, I excused myself to retrieve something from my room. Ever since the phone incident, I had a divorce lawyer's business card ready. Kenny, call this number. I want our marriage to end. Let's handle things through legal channels. Kenny's face drained of color when he saw the business card I handed him. Why? We're expecting a baby. Why are you doing this? At that moment, I disclosed what Kenny had said to everyone on the phone. You heard that. It was just a joke. Do you think that's a valid excuse? I've known all along that you were after my inheritance. Everyone present glared at Kenny, realizing there was no way to justify his actions. Kenny responded with defiance, unwilling to admit his wrongdoing. Rachel, please, I need your help, Kenny pleaded in desperation. He explained that the buyer of the grand piano he sold wanted to return it and get a refund. When Kenny had sold the piano, he claimed it was in perfect condition. However, upon inspection, the buyer discovered a large engraving on the back indicating my brother's ownership. It seemed Kenny hadn't checked thoroughly. Instead of selling it through a reputable dealer, he likely chose a shady one enticed by offers like completely free, and now he faced the consequences. Kenny had to refund $200,000 to the buyer, a significant sum considering his debt to my brother. Despite Kenny's attempt to file for bankruptcy, my brother and I took legal action to prevent it. Now, burdened with more debt, Kenny worked tirelessly in manual labor. Eventually, the heirloom grand piano was safely returned. Relieved, my brother secured it with a strong lock and installed a security camera in the room, exercising caution. No one will touch that piano until I begin my piano lessons, my brother declared, unchanged from his childhood self, which brought a smile to my face. With his desire to start a piano school at our family home, I decided to discuss sharing our mother's inheritance. Feeling guilty for inheriting everything alone after Catherine's devoted care for our mother, I proposed the idea to my brother, who agreed. It ensured a positive relationship with his family in the future. And so, I welcomed a long-awaited baby girl. While some relatives hoped for an heir, I believe daughters tend to cherish their mothers longer in today's age. Besides, my mother, an only daughter herself, accepted a son-in-law, so if necessary, my daughter could do the same. Embracing single motherhood, I found unwavering support from Catherine, who had finished raising her own children. Grateful for her assistance during my mother's care, I felt deeply indebted to her. My brother eagerly volunteered to be a father figure for my daughter, his excitement palpable. Additionally, my brother and Catherine's 2 adult daughters, both kindergarten teachers, shared his passion for the piano, bonding with my daughter. Surrounded by such warmth and support, I felt immensely fortunate, and with gratitude, I resolved to face life's challenges head-on with my daughter by my side.
I'm Abigail. and I thought I'd share my roller coaster of a story with you all. It all started a few months ago when I landed a job at a fancy office downtown. I was ecstatic, to say the least. Finally, my dreams of working in a professional environment were coming true. On my first day, I nervously walked through the polished glass doors of the office building. The grandeur of the place left me in awe. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, and approached the front desk. "Hi there, I'm Abigail. I'm here for my first day," I said, trying to sound confident. The receptionist smiled warmly and replied, "Welcome, Abigail. We've been expecting you. I'm Lisa, by the way. Let me give you a quick tour and introduce you to your new colleagues." Lisa guided me through the office, pointing out different departments and explaining the company's operations. The office was bustling with activity, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement as I imagined myself fitting into this professional world. After the tour, Lisa led me to my department. As we walked in, I could feel the curious gazes of my soon-to-be coworkers upon me. Lisa introduced me to the team, starting with Sarah, a friendly woman with a warm smile. "Hey there, Abigail. Welcome to the team. We're glad to have you on board," Sarah said, extending her hand. "Thank you, Sarah. I'm really excited to be here," I replied, relieved to find such a welcoming colleague. Soon, I met the rest of the team. There was Michael, a witty and knowledgeable guy, always ready with a clever joke to lighten the mood. Emily, the team's expert in data analysis, impressed me with her intelligence and dedication. And finally, there was Alex, a seasoned professional who seemed reserved but approachable. As the day progressed, my new colleagues went out of their way to make me feel comfortable. They shared tips and tricks, helping me navigate the company's systems and procedures. It was evident that they genuinely cared about my success. During lunch break, we all gathered in the office cafeteria. As we sat together, munching on our sandwiches, the conversation flowed freely. "So, Abigail, what made you choose this company?" Michael asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Well, I've always been fascinated by the industry, and this company has such a great reputation for innovation and growth. I knew it would be the perfect place to kickstart my career," I replied, grateful for the chance to share my aspirations. "That's awesome! You'll fit right in. We're a tight-knit team here, always supporting each other," Emily chimed in, offering me a warm smile. Throughout the day, my coworkers continued to extend their support. They patiently answered my questions, shared their experiences, and made me feel like a valued member of the team. It was a refreshing change from the competitive and cutthroat environments I had heard about in other offices. As I left the office that evening, my heart was filled with hope. I knew challenges would come my way, but surrounded by such friendly and supportive colleagues, I felt ready to tackle anything. From the moment I stepped foot into the office, Mr. Thompson made it abundantly clear that he had little regard for my presence. His stern gaze and critical comments were a constant reminder that I could never quite meet his impossibly high standards. One morning, as I settled into my desk, diligently working on a project, Mr. Thompson suddenly appeared behind me. His voice dripped with condescension as he pointed out an inconsequential formatting error. "Abigail, do you even pay attention to the details? This is unacceptable. Fix it immediately," he scolded, his tone laced with disdain. I nodded, my confidence crumbling under his constant barrage of criticism. It seemed that no matter how hard I worked or how much effort I put into my tasks, it was never enough for him. The worst part was the silence from my colleagues. They witnessed Mr. Thompson's harsh treatment but chose to remain silent spectators. Perhaps they were fearful of facing his wrath themselves, or simply didn't want to get involved. Regardless, their silence left me feeling isolated and unsupported. One afternoon, as I sat at my desk, engrossed in a project, Mr. Thompson stormed into the office, his face red with anger. His eyes locked onto mine, and I knew trouble was brewing. "Abigail, how many times do I have to tell you? Pay attention to the details. This report is riddled with mistakes. You're an embarrassment," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the otherwise silent room. My heart sank, and a wave of frustration washed over me. I knew I had put in my best effort, yet it was met with relentless criticism. Feeling defeated, I gathered the strength to reply, "I apologize, Mr. Thompson. I'll make sure to double-check everything from now on." He scoffed dismissively, clearly unimpressed by my response. With a disdainful look, he ordered me to his office, where he planned to further berate me for my perceived incompetence. As we entered his office, he locked the door behind us, trapping me inside with his toxic presence. The room suddenly felt suffocating, and I braced myself for what was to come. "You need to learn your place, Abigail. I'm not here to hold your hand or coddle you. You have to work twice as hard to prove your worth," he sneered, his words dripping with malice. His proximity and the intensity of the situation sent shivers down my spine. I felt a surge of panic, but I refused to let him break me. In a moment of bravery, I mustered the courage to speak up. "Mr. Thompson, this is not how a boss should treat their employees. I deserve respect, and I won't tolerate this kind of behavior." His face twisted into a cruel smile. "Oh, really? And what are you going to do about it? No one will believe you." As he moved closer, invading my personal space, I knew I had to escape. Summoning all my strength, I pushed him away and sprinted towards the door. I burst out of his office, feeling a mix of fear and adrenaline pumping through my veins. That was the breaking point, Reddit. It was clear that I had to take matters into my own hands. No one should have to endure such treatment in the workplace. And so, a fire ignited within me, fueling my determination to seek justice and put an end to Mr. Thompson's reign of terror. As the days went by, it became apparent that my coworkers, who had initially welcomed me with open arms, had fallen into a pattern of silence. They watched silently as Mr. Thompson berated me, scolded me for trivial mistakes, and crushed my self-esteem. One afternoon, after another confrontation with Mr. Thompson, I found solace in the quiet corner of the office. Emily, sensing my distress, cautiously approached me. "Abigail, are you okay?" "I can see that Mr. Thompson's behavior is taking a toll on you," she said softly, concern etched on her face. I sighed, feeling the weight of my frustration and disappointment. It's disheartening that nobody speaks up. We're supposed to be a team, but when I face his wrath, it feels like I'm all alone." Emily's expression turned sympathetic, her voice filled with understanding. "I know it seems that way, Abigail, but people might have their reasons for not speaking up. Fear, insecurity, or perhaps they simply don't know how to handle the situation." Her words struck a chord within me. I realized that the silence of my colleagues might be more complicated than it appeared on the surface. Still, I couldn't help but yearn for their support during these trying times. The following day, during lunch break, I gathered the courage to address the elephant in the room. Seated around the table, I looked at my colleagues and took a deep breath. "Guys, I need to talk to you about something important. It's about the way Mr. Thompson treats me and how it makes me feel. I understand that it's a difficult situation, but I hoped I could count on your support," I began, my voice quivering with vulnerability. Sarah, ever empathetic, reached out and placed a comforting hand on mine. "Abigail, we're so sorry for not speaking up earlier. You're right, no one should have to endure such treatment. We should have been there for you, and we apologize for our silence." Michael, with a solemn expression, chimed in, "Abigail, I want you to know that we value you as a colleague and friend. We may have been silent, but it doesn't mean we condone Mr. Thompson's behavior. We just didn't know how to handle it." I nodded, appreciating their honesty and willingness to address the issue. "Thank you, both of you. It means a lot to hear that. I think it's important for us to stand up against such mistreatment and create a safe and respectful work environment." Emily spoke up, her voice firm with determination. "You're absolutely right, Abigail. We can't let this continue. Let's brainstorm some ideas on how to confront this situation and support you." Together, we spent the lunch break discussing strategies to address the issue. We considered documenting instances of Mr. Thompson's abusive behavior, seeking guidance from human resources, and exploring options for external support. The conversation marked a turning point. It was a collective realization that we had the power to challenge the status quo and make a difference. Although it was daunting, I felt a renewed sense of hope knowing that my colleagues were now willing to take a stand against Mr. Thompson's misconduct. In the upcoming chapters, Reddit, I'll share how we put our plans into action and the ripple effects it had on our workplace dynamics. It's a story of unity and the strength that emerges when we choose to break the silence. The tension in the office had reached its peak. Mr. Thompson's relentless belittlement and abuse had taken a toll on my mental well-being, but I was no longer willing to endure it in silence. With the support of my colleagues, we devised a plan to gather evidence and bring Mr. Thompson's misconduct to light. One fateful day, as I walked down the office corridor with a folder of crucial documents in my hands, I felt a sudden jolt on my shoulder. Before I could react, I stumbled, losing my grip on the folder. The papers scattered across the floor, a scene of chaos and disarray. I looked up, and there he was, Mr. Thompson, wearing a malicious smirk. He wasted no time in seizing the opportunity to berate me once again. "Abigail, look at what you've done! You can't even handle a simple task properly," he sneered, his tone dripping with contempt. I clenched my fists, my anger mixing with a determination to no longer be a victim. As I gathered the fallen documents, I locked eyes with my colleagues who watched the scene unfold from a distance. This was the breaking point. I mustered every ounce of courage within me and met Mr. Thompson's gaze. "You know what, Mr. Thompson? This isn't just about a few dropped papers. This is about your constant harassment and mistreatment towards me and others in this office." His face contorted with surprise, but he quickly regained his composure. "Don't be ridiculous, Abigail. You're blowing things out of proportion. Now, clean up this mess and get back to work." I stood my ground, refusing to be silenced any longer. "No, Mr. Thompson, I won't let you dismiss this. I have evidence of your behavior, and I'm not going to tolerate it any longer. This ends now." With determination in my voice, I turned to my colleagues. "Guys, I need your support. I've gathered surveillance footage documenting Mr. Thompson's harassment. It's time to bring this to Thompson's harassment. It's time to bring this to light and hold him accountable." Sarah stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "Abigail, you can count on us. We stand with you, and we won't let this injustice continue." Michael and Emily nodded in agreement, their expressions filled with determination and support. The following days were a whirlwind of collecting evidence, documenting incidents, and preparing for what lay ahead. We met secretly, strategizing and analyzing the surveillance footage, highlighting the moments when Mr. Thompson's misconduct was captured. Finally, armed with undeniable proof, we filed a formal complaint with the company's Human Resources Department. The evidence we presented was irrefutable, leaving the ER team with no choice but to launch a thorough investigation into Mr. Thompson's behavior. During the investigation, other employees, previously silenced by fear or uncertainty, found the courage to speak up and share their own experiences of Mr. Thompson's harassment. It became clear that his toxic behavior had affected numerous individuals within the office. One morning, as I arrived at the office, I noticed an eerie tension in the air. Whispers circulated among my colleagues, their expressions a mix of concern and confusion. Emily approached me, her voice trembling as she relayed the shocking news. "Abigail, you won't believe what happened. Last night, someone broke into the office and vandalized it. They destroyed important files, tampered with equipment, and left a chilling message on the walls." My heart sank, a mix of anger and disbelief coursing through my veins. How could someone stoop so low, targeting the very place we had worked so hard to rebuild? Together, we walked through the aftermath of the despicable act, surveying the damage. Files were torn apart, computers lay in disarray, and the message scrawled on the wall sent shivers down our spines. "Silence won't save you." It was a chilling reminder that our fight against Mr. Thompson's harassment had provoked a dangerous response. The vandal sought to intimidate and silence us, to make us cower in fear. Sarah joined us, her voice laced with determination. We can't let this break us. We've come so far, and this act of intimidation won't stop us from seeking justice and creating a safe workplace. We need to report this immediately. With a newfound resolve, we reported the incident to the authorities and the company's higher management. The gravity of the situation was not lost on them, and they promised a thorough investigation to identify the perpetrator. Days turned into weeks, and the office slowly regained its sense of security. Increased security measures were put in place, and we received support from both the company and external resources to help us through this difficult time. During one of our team meetings, Michael voiced his frustration. Who could have done such a thing? It's clear that someone wanted to strike fear into our hearts, but we can't let them win. Emily chimed in, her voice filled with determination. Absolutely, Michael, we've been through so much already, and this incident only strengthens our resolve. We won't be silenced. We'll stand even stronger together. United in our determination, we vowed to continue our fight for a safe and respectful workplace. We refused to let fear dictate our actions or deter us from seeking justice. As the investigation unfolded, the truth slowly came to light. It was revealed that the vandalism was orchestrated by a disgruntled former employee who had harbored resentment towards our efforts to expose Mr. Thompson's misconduct. The evidence was strong, and the perpetrator was held accountable for their actions. While the incident was a dark and unsettling chapter in our journey, it served as a testament to the importance of our cause. It reminded us that speaking up against harassment and standing against injustice can sometimes come with a price. But it also highlighted the resilience and unwavering spirit of our team. In the aftermath of the vandalism incident, our resolve to create a safe and respectful workplace was stronger than ever. We refused to let fear consume us, and instead, we channeled our energy into seeking justice for the abuse we had endured. With the support of my colleagues, we embarked on a journey to hold Mr. Thompson accountable for his actions. Armed with the surveillance footage and testimonies from affected employees, we decided to take legal action against him. Emily, determined to see justice served, said, "Abigail, we have the evidence we need to make a strong case against Mr. Thompson. It's time to take this to court and ensure that he faces the consequences of his abusive behavior." Sarah nodded in agreement. "You're absolutely right, Emily. It's not just about seeking justice for ourselves, but also about setting a precedent and protecting others from enduring the same mistreatment." Together, we engaged a skilled lawyer who specialized in workplace harassment cases. The legal proceedings began, and we found ourselves in the courtroom, ready to present our case against Mr. Thompson. As I took the stand, I recounted the instances of harassment I had faced, the toll it had taken on my mental well-being, and the impact it had on our entire office community. The courtroom was filled with tension as the truth unraveled. Mr. Thompson, now facing the consequences of his actions, looked visibly uncomfortable. His arrogance had crumbled, and he was forced to confront the gravity of his abusive behavior. During the cross-examination, Mr. Thompson's lawyer attempted to discredit our claims, questioning our motives and the validity of the evidence. But we stood strong, supported by our legal team and the knowledge that we were fighting for a just cause. In a pivotal moment, Sarah, taking the stand as a witness, bravely shared her own experiences of Mr. Thompson's harassment. Her testimony added weight to our case, solidifying the evidence against him. After weeks of legal proceedings, the court reached a verdict. Mr. Thompson was found guilty of workplace harassment, and the consequences were severe. He was ordered to pay a $100,000 fine, reflecting the severity of his actions, and was dismissed from the company. The relief that washed over us was immeasurable. We had sought justice, and it had been served. Our fight against workplace harassment had not only brought about personal closure, but also set a precedent within our organization. As we celebrated this triumph, our office community began to heal. The toxic atmosphere that had plagued us for far too long started to dissipate, making way for a more supportive and respectful environment. Emily, reflecting on our journey, said, "We've come such a long way, Abigail. We stood up against the injustice, fought for our rights, and emerged victorious. Our collective strength and unity were the driving forces behind this positive change." Michael added, "Absolutely, Emily. It was a challenging and emotional journey, but it's a testament to what can be achieved when people come together and refuse to accept mistreatment. With Mr. Thompson's dismissal, the office underwent a transformation. New policies were implemented to prevent harassment, and training programs were introduced to promote a culture of respect and inclusivity. As the final chapter of my office saga comes to a close, I can't help but reflect on the incredible power of resilience and standing up for what's right. Our fight against workplace harassment ignited a change that rippled beyond our office walls, inspiring others to speak up and demand accountability."
Hey Reddit, my name is Rachel, and I'm here to share my roller coaster of a love story. It all started when I met the charming and charismatic James at a local coffee shop. Let me take you back to that magical day. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I had decided to treat myself to a cup of my favorite caramel latte. As I stood in line, impatiently tapping my foot, my eyes were drawn to a captivating smile across the room. There he was, James, with his deep blue eyes and dimpled cheeks, engrossed in a book. Feeling a spark of curiosity, I mustered up the courage to strike up a conversation. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help but notice you reading. What book has captured your attention so completely?" James looked up, his smile widening. "Oh, it's a classic novel I've always loved. How about you? Do you enjoy reading?" We dove into a passionate discussion about our favorite books and soon discovered a shared love for adventure and mystery novels. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and before I knew it, hours had passed and the coffee shop was closing. Reluctantly, we exchanged numbers, promising to continue our conversation another time. Little did I know that this chance encounter would mark the beginning of an extraordinary love story. Over the next few weeks, James and I spent countless hours getting to know each other. Our shared interests and values created a deep connection, and it wasn't long before our friendship blossomed into something more. One evening, James surprised me with tickets to a romantic sunset cruise. As we sailed along the calm waters, he took my hand and looked into my eyes with genuine adoration. "Rachel, from the moment I met you, I knew there was something special between us. You filled my life with laughter and love, and I can't imagine my future without you. Will you be mine?" Tears of joy welled up in my eyes as I nodded, unable to find the words to express my happiness. James slid a delicate silver ring onto my finger, sealing our commitment. "I promise to make every day as magical as this one. Rachel, you deserve nothing less than a lifetime of happiness," he whispered, pulling me into a warm embrace. And so, our perfect love story began. From that day forward, we embarked on a journey filled with laughter, adventure, and unwavering support for each other's dreams. Our love grew stronger with each passing day, and we eagerly started planning a future together. With the ring sparkling on my finger, I couldn't wait to embark on this new chapter of our lives together. James and I sat down, creating a Pinterest board filled with wedding ideas and inspiration. We envisioned a celebration that reflected our personalities and the love we shared. One evening, we snuggled up on the couch, sifting through bridal magazines, our eyes filled with dreams. "Rachel, I want our wedding to be a day we'll cherish forever, something truly extraordinary," James said, his voice brimming with excitement. I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling a surge of warmth. "I couldn't agree more, James. Let's make it a day that truly captures the essence of our love." And so, we began our journey of wedding planning, meticulously organizing every detail. We spent countless hours visiting venues, searching for the perfect location to exchange our vows. James, being the romantic that he was, insisted on a breathtaking outdoor garden ceremony surrounded by blooming flowers and soft sunlight. As we settled on a date and location, the guest list became our next challenge. Our families and closest friends filled the list, each name a testament to the bonds we had forged. We carefully selected invitations that reflected the elegance and joy we wished to convey. Food tasting was a delicious highlight of the planning process. We sampled an array of delectable dishes, savoring each bite and envisioning our loved ones enjoying the same flavors on our special day. The menu consisted of culinary delights that catered to various dietary preferences, ensuring everyone would leave with smiles and satisfied taste buds. Throughout the planning process, James and I faced occasional disagreements, but we always found a way to compromise. Like when it came to choosing between a live band or a DJ for the reception, we decided to have both. A live band to set the mood during dinner, and a DJ to get the party started afterward. One evening, as we finalized the floral arrangements, James paused, looking at me with a mischievous grin. Rachel, you know what would make our wedding truly unforgettable. A surprise dance performance? I laughed, picturing James twirling me around the dance floor. Are you sure you can keep up with my moves? He pulled me close, his eyes twinkling. I'll do whatever it takes to keep up with you, my love. With each decision made, our love story intertwined with the details of our impending wedding. It felt like we were creating a fairy tale come to life, and I couldn't help but feel blessed to have found a partner who shared my dreams and embraced the journey with equal enthusiasm. The day before our long-awaited wedding, anticipation hung in the air like electricity. I woke up early, a mix of nerves and excitement pulsating through my veins. James, however, was nowhere to be found. He had left for a business trip, promising to return in time for our rehearsal dinner. As the hours ticked by, my worry grew. Late that night, I heard the front door creak open, and in walked James, his steps unsteady, and the scent of alcohol wafting around him. My heart sank at the sight before me. James, where have you been? The rehearsal dinner was hours ago. He stumbled toward me, a sheepish look on his face. I'm sorry, Rachel. The business trip, it didn't go as planned. Things got out of control. My voice shook with a mix of anger and concern. Out of control? What happened, James? You left me here worrying while you were out drinking? His words slurred. James tried to defend himself. It wasn't like that, Rachel. It was just a couple of drinks to take the edge off. My patience wearing thin, I pointed at the lipstick marks visible on his neck. And what about those? What's the meaning of this? James hesitated, his eyes avoiding mine. It's nothing, Rachel. Just some stupid mistake. It doesn't mean anything. Anger surged within me, fueling my words. A mistake! James, you're about to marry me and you come home drunk with marks on your neck the night before our wedding. How can you disrespect me like this? He grew defensive, his voice rising. Oh, please, Rachel. You're overreacting. It's just a silly fling. Nothing compared to what we have. The room spun with a mix of betrayal, hurt, and anger. My voice shook as tears welled in my eyes. You call it a fling. This is a betrayal, James. I thought I knew you, but clearly, I was wrong. I can't go through with this wedding. With those words, I stormed out of the room, my heart shattered into a million pieces. James called after me, but his words fell on deaf ears. I couldn't bear to be in the presence of someone who had hurt me so deeply. Leaving the house, I sought solace at my parents' home, finding comfort in their unconditional love and support. As I lay in bed that night, tears staining my pillow, I came to a painful realization. The man I had loved, trusted, and planned a future with had shown his true colors. The fairy tale I had believed in had crumbled, leaving behind only a bitter taste of deceit. In the days following the devastating betrayal, I found refuge at my parents' house. Their unwavering support and love helped me navigate the storm of emotions swirling within me. But there was a fire burning inside, fueled by a sense of injustice and a need for closure. With determination in my heart, I made the decision to confront James, to demand answers and closure for the pain he had inflicted upon me. It wasn't easy, summoning the strength to face the man who had shattered my dreams, but I knew it was a necessary step in my healing process. On a cloudy afternoon, I stood in front of the house we had once called our own. My heart raced as I knocked on the door, my palms sweaty. James opened it, his eyes filled with regret and guilt. "Rachel," he whispered, his voice filled with remorse. "I've been waiting for you to come back. I'm so sorry for everything." I met his gaze, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. "Sorry isn't enough, James. You broke my trust and our love. I need to understand why." His eyes welled up with tears, his voice pleading. "Rachel, I don't have any excuses. I messed up and I regret it every single day. I wish I could turn back time." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "It's not just about the betrayal, James. It's about the person you became in that moment. The way you spoke to me, the violence you showed. That's not love." Tears streamed down my face as I recounted the pain and humiliation I had endured. James hung his head in shame, unable to meet my gaze. "I can't even recognize the man you've become. How could you hurt me like that?" He reached out, wanting to touch me, but I stepped back, tears mingling with the rain outside. "No, James, it's over. Our love story has ended in the worst way possible. I deserve better than this." Anger flashed across his face, his voice laced with bitterness. "Oh, please, Rachel, you were never that special." My blood boiled, a fire igniting within me. "How dare you? I am not defined by your words or your actions. I am strong, resilient, and deserving of respect. You lost me, James, and I will find happiness without you." In that moment, I realized that leaving was the best decision I had ever made. No longer would I allow myself to be subjected to the toxicity that had consumed our relationship. With a final glance filled with disappointment, I turned away from James, leaving behind the shattered remnants of our love. Days had turned into weeks since the confrontation with James. The pain still lingered, but with each passing day, I felt a glimmer of strength returning to my spirit. It was time to face the remnants of our shattered love, the house that had once been our sanctuary. Taking a deep breath, I stood in front of the familiar doorstep, my hand trembling as I reached for the doorknob. The house, once filled with laughter and love, now stood in eerie silence. The emptiness echoed the void in my heart. As I stepped inside, memories washed over me like waves crashing against the shore. The walls whispered stories of joy, but their voices were drowned out by the pain that now stained every corner. The rooms felt colder, the once inviting space now hauntingly desolate. I walked through the hallways, tracing my fingers along the familiar frames that once held our cherished photographs. A pang of sadness gripped me as I stared at the empty spaces, reminders of a love that had turned to ashes. In the bedroom, I opened the closet hoping to find remnants of my life that I had left behind. Clothes still hung neatly untouched. I realized that James had no intention of returning, leaving behind not only our love, but also the belongings we had once shared. Tears welled up in my eyes as I began to gather my things, meticulously packing them into boxes. It was a bittersweet process, a physical manifestation of the closure I sought. Each item held memories, both beautiful and painful, but I knew they no longer belonged in my life. As I rummaged through drawers, searching for a small envelope where I had kept my hard-earned savings, panic washed over me. It was nowhere to be found. Dread settled in my stomach as I realized that James, in his final act of betrayal, had stolen the money that was meant for our future. Frustration and anger mingled within me, tears streaming down my face. How could he sink so low? I felt violated, robbed not only of love, but of my financial security as well. With a heavy heart, I left the empty house, carrying boxes filled with the remnant of a life that would never be. The door closed behind me, sealing the chapter of our shared home. It was a symbolic farewell to the past, a step toward a new beginning. With determination burning in my heart, I decided to take legal action against James for the abuse I endured and the theft of my hard-earned savings. It was time to stand up for myself, to ensure that he faced the consequences of his actions. The day arrived when I walked into the courtroom, my head held high despite the anxiety simmering beneath the surface. My lawyer stood by my side, a pillar of support, ready to fight for justice on my behalf. As the proceedings began, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. James sat across from me, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and defiance. The weight of his actions hung heavily in the air. My lawyer presented my case with unwavering conviction, recounting the painful moments of abuse and the theft that had shattered my trust. The evidence was laid out, and my story unfolded before the judge and jury. During the cross-examination, James's lawyer attempted to paint a different picture, questioning the validity of my claims and attempting to undermine my character. But I stood my ground, refusing to be silenced or intimidated. In a moment of vulnerability, I looked directly at James. You took away my sense of security and violated the trust we once shared. But today, I'm taking back my power. No longer will I allow you to diminish my worth. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unable to meet my gaze. I never meant for things to turn out this way, Rachel. I made mistakes, but I still care about you. A surge of anger coursed through me, mingling with the pain that still lingered. Caring doesn't excuse abuse or theft. You had a choice, James, and you made the wrong ones. You need to face the consequences. As the trial proceeded, witnesses testified supporting my claims and shedding light on the true nature of our relationship. Their words added weight to my case, validating my experiences and the pain I had endured. After days of emotional testimonies and intense scrutiny, the judgment was finally rendered. The court recognized the validity of my claims and acknowledged the impact of James's actions on my life. The judge's voice resonated through the courtroom. Based on the evidence presented and the accounts given, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Rachel. The defendant, James, is hereby ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $55,000 for the theft and emotional distress caused. Relief washed over me as the gavel came down, sealing the outcome of the trial. It wasn't just about the monetary compensation. It was about justice being served and my voice being heard. The court ruling had brought me a sense of relief, but it was the pursuit of justice that gave me a renewed sense of purpose. Armed with the legal victory, I was determined to ensure that James faced the consequences of his actions. As the judgment dictated, James was ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $55,000 for the theft and emotional distress he had caused. It was a substantial sum, but it symbolized more than just financial recompense. It represented the acknowledgement of my pain and the vindication I sought. Days turned into weeks as I patiently awaited the payment. I knew that holding him accountable was crucial not only for myself, but also to send a message that abuse and betrayal would not go unpunished. Finally, a certified letter arrived at my doorstep confirming the payment of the restitution. The envelope felt weighty in my hands, carrying not just the monetary compensation, but also a sense of closure and triumph. With a mix of anticipation and trepidation, I opened the envelope, revealing the check that bore James's name. It was a symbolic victory, a tangible proof that I had won the battle against the person who had hurt me so deeply. A smile tugged at the corners of my lips as I held the check in my hands, my heart filled with a bittersweet satisfaction. I had reclaimed my power and proved that I was not defined by the pain he had inflicted upon me. However, the revenge I sought was not just financial. It was about healing, moving forward, and finding happiness on my own terms. It was about building a life that thrived in the aftermath of heartbreak. In a moment of reflection, I thought about all the things I had learned throughout this journey, the strength I discovered within myself, the unwavering support of my loved ones, and the resilience that grew from the ashes of a broken love story. My phone buzzed with a notification, a message from James. He pleaded for forgiveness, expressing remorse and regret for the pain he had caused. His words were met with silence. I had no interest in rekindling a flame that had burned me so badly. I typed out a response, my words measured and filled with finality. James, your actions have had irreversible consequences. I have found my strength, and I will not be dragged back into the darkness. This chapter is closed, and I wish you the growth and change you so desperately need. With that, I hit send, knowing that I had the power to define my own narrative, free from the toxicity that had once consumed my life.